It doesn't matter if I was built or encouraged to fail. What matters is if I allow that to wake me up at sunrise and tuck me in at night. It's about time I take a U-turn. Go through those moments that resilience perpetrated my young and vibrant being. Matter of fact, it's about time I allow all of you to also walk through that with me. I want you all to know that tonight we've talked about topics that are very, very important to each and every one of us in many different ways. But tonight I'm going to give you an anecdote that comes close to my heart so that I can have you feel it in your seats. I'm going to tell my story. I'm not telling it for any sympathy, any pity, but I'm hoping that it will allow all of you to connect with individuals like me or start a conversation with yourselves. So let's do it. Story mode. Let's go. Start of life. It's just me, my siblings, and my pops. Living in an old, rundown trailer home in the deep south of Mississippi. My mom's gone at this time, so I'm just learning how to deal with pops. He's trying his best to love girls that aren't even all his, but he's doing the best he can. He's very, very poor, but none of that mattered to him as long as we were okay. Wow. It's about time we give credit to parents and guardians who sacrifice and give to children love, support, and everything that they need inside, here, now. No matter what it looks like, no matter how much. This man right here is my father, someone I have yet to meet since age 1. It's not working. Thank you. Sorry about that. These are 3 girls that he raised all by himself when my mother decided that drugs and alcohol were more important than her youth, her children, her family. That's me. Jay's on my feet since day 1. But I'm proud to be here because I have a story to tell you that might scare you, but it's very important. At age 1, my mother had my father arrested for kidnapping me. That story never made sense to me, as he was only taking care of me. However, she wasn't happy to see someone that wasn't blood taking care of her own youth, even if she wasn't ready to do so. So he went to jail, and my mother moved my siblings and I up to Minnesota, gave us to my aunts and my grandparents, and told them, please hold on to them, feed them the lies that I give you, and when I return, I promise I will fix it and make it all better. So they tried. They tried. But for the most part, they decided not to talk about it at all, which was very detrimental on me as a youth. I didn't have a mother and a father growing up at this point now. That hit home. I don't have any photos from 1 to 7 because they didn't want me to remember what it was like without her, without him. So I'll just tell you about it. At 2 to 7 years old, I started going to school, going to activities, and realizing I had something a lot different than the rest of the kids. I had a story that didn't quite match up like everybody else's. I was now living with my aunt, who was raising 3 girls that weren't hers and 4 kids of her own, and barely making ends meet, but still trying to teach us about what our melanin means to the country that we live in, giving us every inch of herself that she had, that sometimes she may have forgotten to give some to herself. No, she's not perfect. But that's why she instilled something in us that still sits with us today, and that's connection. relationships with each other. She taught me things about unity, told me if I want to go somewhere, like I want to go to the park, well, that means everybody's got to go to the park. Yeah, I like that. But the older kids didn't really seem to like that at all. Any of you older in here don't? Yeah. I still don't get why they didn't like it. Come with me. I'm lonely, right? But for some reason, I still didn't feel as if I had a community everywhere else I went outside of home. In class, the teacher would remind me of my sad reality on days like Parent Appreciation Day, Family History Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and she kept doing it all year long. A little boy comes up to me in class, first grade, says, "I got a question for you, Cece." I'm like, okay. "Why are you so dirty?" I don't know. It's a good question, I guess. I didn't know I was dirty. "Why are you so dark?" That's a really good question, Mike. So I go home and I ask I asked my aunt, and she says, "Well, it doesn't really matter because you fit in at home just fine." So I said, okay. And I learned to grow and coexist with kids in an environment that made me realize how different I was in many different ways. That stuck to me. Deep. 5 years old, and I already realized I don't fit in. I don't have mom. I don't have dad. I just have me. I'm the only thing like me that reminds me of home. So we moved to age 7. I deal with that. I live with that. Age 7, mom comes back. She's excited. I don't recognize her at all, so my sister has to tap me on the shoulder and say, "That's mom. Please go hug her." I look at her and say, "Girl, we ain't got no mom." She instilled in me right away that it's about time that I let somebody in. So I was like, cool. Big sis, I'm the youngest, so of course I take her and I listen. Next thing you know, I'm in a cab driving far, far away from a home that I did feel safe in. May not have felt connected, but I felt safe. We wound up moving 3 hours away into neighborhoods that were not safe. This was the time where I was firstly introduced to sex, gang violence, gun relations, drugs and alcohol. 7 years old, and it was all on my kitchen table. I bet some of you have been in a classroom at some point in your life at 7 years old and didn't realize that somebody sitting next to you could have been experiencing those types of things so young. So nobody ever asked me if I was okay. Nobody ever asked me if things were normal. No one ever asked, "Are you safe?" So I said nothing, and I moved on, and I lived my life, and I did what I had to do. But then life just kept getting harder and harder and harder, because now at this point, my sister and I are both understanding what it's like to experience rape. We understand what it's like to experience sex in a manipulative way. My mother told me one time, "If you bring that up in front of my face again, I'm going to have to handle you." I had no idea what she meant by that, but I wasn't trying to find out. See, all these things we're experiencing in such a short amount of time, and nobody wants to talk about it. Mama came back and didn't even say why she was gone. I can't even ask the questions I need the answers to. So I keep moving forward. I don't tell nobody. I go to class. I play outside. I do what I got to do. Age 9, nobody said, this is where it got harder. 9 years old, barely know anything about my mother. She doesn't know her kids at all. There's no connection. I know that I live with a guardian and she takes care of me, but sometimes that in itself isn't enough. I'm starting to feel very weak and very sad, but I can't talk about it. My mom thinks the cure is a man. So within 6 months after I'm 9 years old, my mom marries a man. I knew him for 2 weeks. I get in the wedding and I find out that this man is not who he portrayed himself to be. And life was not about to get any easier. I thought for just a moment by having two parents in a household that God is finally taking a break on me. There's going to be someone to balance this lady out, balance my life out. But it turns out that was not what was going to happen. The day of the wedding, I take my shoes off because, well, I don't like these things on my feet right here. So I take them off, and he comes and he grabs me, tells me to come here, pulls me in a back room. And, well, for sensory and time, I won't go into detail. But if you ask the two of them to this day, they will tell you that I got what I deserve. I didn't understand why that angered him so much, and still to the day I don't. But see, that doesn't matter, because I couldn't even ask the questions I needed to know the answers to. Quickly, I realized that my mother and now my father, my dad, had a better relationship with drugs and alcohol than they did with us. They became dependent on something that wasn't love, that wasn't light. And so with that dependency came a lot of toxic masculinity. It became a toxic environment, a toxic home. I became toxic. With this alcohol substance living within him and her, he became violent and she became submissive. So whenever he would beat me, see, I was the shy one at home. I never spoke up. Never. The other two, they challenged him. They wouldn't let him get too close without saying, back it up, boy. Me, I cried because I knew what was coming. You asked me to do something, and I'll do it as quick as I can, but just give me 3 seconds to get up off the floor. But I was never good enough or quick enough in my home. So there was always a punishment after anything I was asked to do, whether I did it on time or not. My sister, the one peeking her head up off the pillow, she was a fighter. But watching her younger sibling go through something she couldn't control took a weight on her as well. At just 11 years old, she tried to commit suicide twice. One by slicing, the other by going in my mother's cabinets and trying to overdose herself. See, now, that might sound like a very painful thing to go through for her, but even for me, I was suffering for her when she was suffering for me. Let's skip. 2 months later, she continues to try and end things for herself because she thinks the easier way out is to get out. My parents didn't really like the idea of this attention coming into their home. Of course, people were coming and asking questions, and so they sent her away. They sent her to a psych ward anytime she rolled her eyes or smacked her lips or said, "I'm not doing that while you're drunk." They would send her off and tell those adults that she lives in a great, safe home. She just doesn't know how to behave. And they don't ask the children, so they take them in as patients, they give them medicine, and they lock them up. I was terrified that I was next, so I never tried to make them angry. Now bear with me. I do get older, which means I survived it. I got through it. Somehow I managed to push forward. And I get to 14 years old where my sister and I decide enough's enough. This day I'm doing my homework at the table, and my dad comes up to me and says, "Why are you doing this in the kitchen while we're cooking?" That's the response I gave, a quick knock in the jaw, tears down my face. My sister runs in, looks at him, grabs me, says it's the time. I knew what she was talking about because my brother, my sister, and I had already planned multiple times about how we were going to run away. We couldn't do it anymore. But we're too young to really understand what it means to actually run away and get away. But we trusted our minds, and we trusted the speed of our legs. So we ran over a mile to the police station, and we confessed everything that had been going on for the last 5 years. And well, it was a relief to know that somebody believed us. I had enough bruises on my body to show them, so I was hoping that they would. 2 days later, my sister and I entered something that most of you know as the foster care system. It was crazy how quick they got on that. But right away I realized it's not any easier in the house as it is out of the house. We go into the foster care system and there's nobody that looks like us. We don't get a black mom. We don't get a black dad. We don't get anybody that's brown, maybe even light-skinned. Everybody we run into, every single home, every single school, happened to be very different from what we were used to. And we just had to be okay with that. And of course I was. My sister, on the other hand, chose to fight, to cry, to yell, scream, beat me. Now I was getting the same things from her. Later on, we realized that she was just repeating what she saw. At 14, the state decided that we'd been through enough, that we have to deal with what's going on. And so they said, let's figure out what's happening internally. So they decided to test us. They did many of them. Turns out that my sister and I, at 14 years old and 15 years old, both got diagnosed with atypical and major depression and signs of PTSD. They said, we can't have you two in the same home going through the same things. I think you need some space. So at 15, they separated the only member of family from me. I now am growing up without anybody close to my heart, anybody close to my home, and I have to be okay with that. I start going to more and more schools. It's like they were moving me because I didn't like a subject. So, okay, let's go. You know, that's how it started to feel. And in every school that I went to, I was either the only black kid in my grade or the only black kid in my school. And I never knew what it was like for my sister. But I adjusted just fine. See, there I'm not going to show you any photos for the sake of keeping those people, those children, those adults private. Because it's not their story, right? So I have nothing, but I'll continue to talk. I get into really great opportunities. I realize white people love to see black kids happy. You want to play basketball? You look like a basketball player. I was cool. I didn't know how to play basketball, y'all. They threw me on the basketball team, said, you got some nice legs. Can you run? I said, oh, I've ran before. Great, you're on the track team. Thanks. Can you run fast? Yeah. You're a sprinter. Okay, how about cross country? Oh, I don't like to run that far. Oh, but you're gonna. Okay. So at this point now, I'm starting to see a different side of life. Is foster care a good thing? That's what I start to ask myself. I say, I've got more opportunities than I ever had. I haven't gotten beat since I was 14. I've seen alcohol since I was 14. And nobody's touched me where they shouldn't touch me since I was 14. I think life's going better. I think when I turn 18, I'll be able to live life like I'm supposed to, and it's not going to be the way that it was. I try to forget about my past. My sister now, she's living through it. Still trying and trying to attempt to leave. See, I see it as a sign at the time of weakness. I told her, you can't be doing that weak stuff. We tough out here. We were born to be tough. But studies show, in 2018, Mayo Clinic even said, depression doesn't go away. It does last. It does need treatment. And you're not weak because of it. See, there are people out there studying the fact that trauma creates sad, sometimes sickening times for youth. Now, I'm saying youth because I'm barely 21, so I'm not an adult. 17 years old, 3 years in the foster care system, life's lightening up. A family at my school decides, I want to adopt her. They were about to move me again, this time 4 hours away from my high school, and I said, please don't let me go. I'm tired of moving. I'm comfortable. I made friends. I've had friends here for more than a year. That's the longest I've ever held a relationship because of how often I've had to move. So my teacher goes, bet. Let me go home and talk to my husband. And next thing you know, literally a week later, a social worker's calling me saying, hey, we've got a family in your city, Red Wing, Minnesota, who would like to adopt you. I said, is it the teacher or is it another one of those weird families? And she was like, oh, it's the teacher. I was like, oh, cool. See, to get adopted, I didn't know that meant it came with love, it came with support, it came with guidance. I just wanted to stay where I was at. 17 years old, I get adopted. A beautiful family. However, my father walks back in my life and says, hey, is this Aridasee? Oh, yeah. It's your dad. How did you get my number? Oh, somebody told me you've been searching for me, and I've been searching for you, so can you keep me on the phone so we could talk? It's 11 at night, and my family upstairs would not like me talking to my birth family. Plus, you ain't been here for 17 years, so why would I want to have a conversation with you, sir? He said, because I've been trying to have you for the last 17 years, so just let me have a conversation. I shut it off. Never answered another call. At 17 years old, trauma started to re-enter my life. I started to think about my father now. All those emotions I felt growing up. Started to think about my mother. All of that loss, all of that pain. I started to think about what it was like to always be different. I started to think about what it was like to not have anybody like me, related to me, near me. It came out in a way that I still am dealing with. My father that adopted me was doing something to help me relax after a basketball game, but to me, it was a trigger. I thought he was trying to sexually abuse me again. Past tense, it's happened before. I told you a little bit about that. And so I scream, I yell, and I go downstairs. The next day, I call my social worker and I said, he tried to touch me. Now, in my head, that's exactly what happened. Not necessarily, but that's what was about to happen. So I tried to stop it right there. Survival mode. We learned some things. Next thing you know, when I tell you life's fast for me, oh, it's fast. The next day, the mother says, no way would he do that. Says, I don't want her coming back here spreading those lies. In my mind, that happened. Later we find out it was a trigger. Something too similar to what had happened in the past made me believe it was happening again. Many youth, many people go through that. And sometimes the consequences are very sad. I lost my relationship with my adoptive family. I'm adopted at 20 years old, but do I have a relationship with them? I do not. I lost that connection. 18 years old, I'm graduated in high school. I no longer have a family. So I attempt to go to college in order to have a place to stay, and I can't manage. I start to acknowledge the fact that I'm not depressed, but I'm very sad. Although I told all of you I was diagnosed at 14, right? I drop out of college. I'm homeless. 7 months. I had a car that they gave me. I didn't want to give it back. I'm living in and out of that car. You guys, it's the middle of winter. It is cold. When I tell you it is cold in the winter, it makes me think of others who are living outside during times. Most of us are sitting at home in a warm space with people we love. But at that time, at 18 years old, I had nobody, thought I had nothing, and I was living on my own. But see, for me, I couldn't deal with the truth, so I decided to say, I'm okay, nothing's really going on. Let me try to figure out how to make things better for myself. So I get in my car, drive to the public library. I Google places far away. See, my survival mode is running, and I've recognized that, and now I'm working on that. But then I had no idea that that was me trying to survive. I thought I just needed a clean slate. I didn't know that I messed up that bad. So I picked a place on the map, and guess where that landed me? Right here in Moorhead. I came to Moorhead not intending to go to college. At this point, I thought I was incapable of doing so because of what was going on in my life. I reached out to a couple of places that changed my life forever. I don't know if any of you guys know what Youth Works is, but it definitely changed my life. They got me on my feet, told me I'm capable, told me I'm loved, and that I can do it. And I started to believe them after a while, like, how did y'all make me believe that? Only I can make myself believe stuff. But the power of a presence and the power of connection, I started to trust them. They started to tell me that my story was very important. I was a lot brighter than some of the clients that they had come in. I always saw a better way. I always saw a way out. I always saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, well, that's just so I can survive, because otherwise I'd be doing what my sister's doing. Not that there's any shame, but I didn't want to go down that way. So she says, okay, do something about it then. I said, do what? I'm broke. She said, well, we'll get you a job. I said, I don't know how to apply for a job. And she said, well, we'll teach you. So she got me a roof over my head, kept gas in my tank, and got me my very first adult job. Y'all, I was cashiering at Hornbacher's. That place is dope. So I was there for a little bit. Didn't know how to keep a job. I did what I could. Next thing you know, they tell me, don't you think you're worth a lot more than just a job? You have so much up here. Why don't you use it? You have a story that can be told that clearly it sounds like you've moved on from. Why don't you talk about it? I said, I'm not ready. She said, okay, well then get in school until you are. I said, I can't. There's so many barriers for me. I don't have parents. I can't use their information. I don't have money to stay in there. I can't pay for my tuition. I can't pay for this and that. And they said, well, we'll help you find some grants, some vouchers. We'll help you do anything we need to help you do to get you in school, because you have something inside of you that you need to identify. And we can't do it for you, but we want to lead you down that path. So I said, okay. First year in college, I succeed. Great connections in this room. I actually know about half of you in here. That year for me was in 2018. It's that early. I get through my first year at college. I was like, cool. But didn't nobody say it was this hard. I'm getting through it. I'm trying my best not to think about anything I've experienced throughout life. So they tell me, have you thought about telling your story? I said, how you know about my story? They said, girl, you was just in the newspaper like 3 days ago. I was like, what? They were like, yeah, didn't they tell you? I was like, oh, I didn't think they were serious. No one's ever been that interested in me. She said, go and tell people. I said, okay. So I just started telling what happened. Not with an intention to make things better, just to say, hey, there's somebody out here that made it to college. When they told me I wasn't ever going to make it, statistics show that most students, or most individuals, youth, who come from foster care homes or experience depression, experience abuse of any sort, are likely to either drop out of high school or never make it to college. So right there, I'm beating the odds. Hey, woo! So I say, okay, I'm beating the odds. That's what I'll put at the end of my story every time I tell it. I'm beating the odds. And they said, that's not enough. I said, y'all are tripping. They said, that's not enough. There's something else inside of you that we need you to dig out. It was people like them connecting with somebody like me to get me where I am here today. I gave you that long story, but we got time. I gave you that long story because I wanted you to know that I haven't always had it together. But I'm here. I know there's somebody in this crowd who's gone through similar things, or gone through things that they thought they should have never made it through. But you did. And that's me trying to connect to you, saying, congratulations, I'm happy for you. Now someday, please get on this stage and do what I also want to do, and that is help other people. Connect with them so that everyone's not so afraid to talk about the tough stuff. Now for me, that was a tough topic, I'm going to be honest, which is why I had to slow it down. My heart's racing. But if I never said I've gone through it, somebody in this room might have kept something of an experience that was similar to themselves, and maybe they wouldn't have had a result as light as this one. But I was hoping to change all of that. Here's why. For my very first time, met some really cool people. Some of you guys may or may not know these two individuals. They make music videos with a police officer here in Fargo, Moorhead. I don't know if you guys know him, but They make music videos and create content for youth dealing with the police and the community to try to bring a better upbringing for the idea of dealing with cops and people of color. And I thought that was dope. White cop, 2 black rappers, better combo, right? They're doing great things. So I said, you know what, let me get connected to people who are already doing great things so I can figure out how to do great things with myself. So I do that. And then my dad comes in the picture and he says, I want you to drop everything. I don't know where you're at in life right now, but I want you to drop it all. I want to meet you. I said, pause, Dad. I got things to handle, but I plan on coming back to you. Why? Because I had an opportunity to heal from a lot of things that I just told you about. And in a way for me to do that, I used music. Music was my outlet. I started writing poetry. I started performing it. People started telling me, yo, you can rap. I was like, for real? They were like, yeah. I was like, can I sing? They were like, I don't know, sing me something. I was like, ah. They was like, okay, cool. I was like, all right, maybe not. But that was my start. I said, let me tell it in a way that is pleasing to the ear. So I started singing and rapping all over the place. This is actually somewhere on campus in Moorhead, or on this Moorhead campus. And it started to create an attention that made people feel heard. Someone said, you just told my story. I said, huh? You just told my story. I said, I did? That's my story. And see, right away, I started to notice that those barriers, that story I shared with y'all, wasn't such a bad thing after all. They made me realize that I went through some things that made me valuable to the community I'm around, I walk into, or that is over there. I've got a story that matters to some people. So I said, cool. I'm going to try my very best to keep talking then. And I'm not going to stop until someone says, okay, the world is perfect, we've had enough. And I'll be like, yay! So I start telling my story to important organizations that can do something about it. I made it out. That's the moral of this. I made it out. That's a magazine, and that's me doing great things. I thought it rhymed. I was trying to show you I can rap, but it's cool. I started to work really hard because I didn't just make it out, but now I needed to give youth and I needed to give people who were still in it a reason to want to make it out. Okay, I made it out, but am I doing anything? So I said, okay, let me do something for others. So I continued to find opportunities. If I didn't have the resources, I searched for them. I said, you know something about something that makes you travel, right? Professor in the back here said, yeah. I was like, cool. You want to tell me about it? She said, yeah. So you want to pay for it? She said, yeah. I was like, okay, thank you. I had to do that a lot in order to get resources because I couldn't do it on my own. See, I was underprivileged, so I had to do what I had to do in order to make some moves. I continued to push myself. I said, you know what, it's not going to be memorable if I sit in my story. I now have to use it, talk about it, be something greater than it, and then I need to go back and tell everybody, you're not meant to stay here. You're not meant to be right there. You're meant to be something greater. Whether I believed it or not, for myself, I needed our community to be bigger and better. And the only way to do that, sometimes we can't change the circumstances, but we can change the hearts of the people in them. I started thinking and processing and saying, how can I reach kids who've gone through things I've gone through without making them scared? Because I was always scared. They said, well, you've got connections. Go and talk to those teachers. Go and talk to those program directors. I said, okay. I said, okay, a lot. Y'all hear that? It's like, okay, just do as I'm told, okay. So I did so. And eventually, we all came up with an idea of just telling stories, so that they can get out there, so then more voices can feel like, I'm not in this alone. That created a ripple effect. Rise became very important to some youth that I know from home, from here, and organizations that are hiding. And so I decided my life's purpose is no longer about this degree. It's no longer about trying to have a roof over my head. It's now about getting out. Getting them out. Because as I told you that story, nobody was there to help me get out. See, I still went through each and everything. Nobody checked on me. Nobody asked the right questions. And yeah, it turned out okay. But there are individuals that I did go through the foster care system with who haven't turned out okay. And I wonder if things could have changed if someone just spoke up. If someone just connected with them. So that's what I intend to do. And not because I have to, not because it's possible for me, but because there are people out there, there are kids out there who don't believe it's possible for them. I bet you I didn't know I went through half that stuff, but don't hold it to me. It's not my identity, but it is a part of my story. But then that means take a look at everybody in this room. When you go back to class, take a look at all those individuals in that class and realize you are sitting in a room with somebody who may have gone through something very difficult. I'm not asking you to go and ask them about it. I'm just asking you to speak up. Ask, hey, are you okay? Anything you want to talk about? How's life at home? I know you're at school, but just asking. Do you need anything? Are your needs being met? And that's how we'll start. I want to ask all of you, please answer out loud, and I hope to hear some yeses and some nos, but are your needs being met? Sometimes? Sometimes? Well, then join me and help me make sure that your needs emotionally, mentally, and physically can be met. And also be proud to join me in making sure that youth who grow up like me and you also have that opportunity too. Because they can't do it if they don't believe in themselves. So believe in this, believe in them, and we'll have more Aridsee Tislands. Thank you.